In Plato's allegory of the cave, chained prisoners in a cavern are forced to look at projected images of reality on a wall. These images are created by mysterious shadow makers, a stand-in for those who serve the powerful. The images are a form of mind control meant to create a false image that the prisoners perceive as reality. But what happens when the lies the shadow makers project get so outrageous that the prisoners leave the cave? How will the shadow makers react when no one believes them anymore and they realize they no longer serve a purpose? We no longer have to wonder, as our real-life shadow makers, the corporate media, are now experiencing this with the election of Donald Trump. Let's dive in. Of all the false narratives the corporate press has promoted, there was no better example than the Find People hoax. This hoax, which alleges Trump praised some very bad men, was an obvious lie from the beginning, as this clip shows.
Racism is evil, and those who cause violence in its name are criminals and thugs, including the KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, or you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is. And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you...
Trump did not call neo-Nazis or white nationalists very fine people. However, our corporate media shadow makers, dedicated to the narrative that Donald Trump was beyond the pale, pushed this hoax from the beginning. CNN's Jake Tapper is the poster child for how all of the shadow makers that make up the corporate press covered this story.
This is the president who said there were, quote, very fine people on both sides in a Charlottesville neo-Nazi Klan march in Charlottesville, and his infamous reference to very fine people. There were, quote, very fine people on both sides of that Charlottesville, Virginia march.
If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it, is how one famous propagandist put it. This is what the corporate media did, to the point that they and major Democratic leaders believed the lie themselves.
The president was asked what he thought had happened. Donald Trump said, and I quote, "There are very fine people on both sides. My God." That's what he said.
Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side.
Why would you place your faith in somebody who said that there were very fine people on both sides of a white supremacist rally?
The people in the cave, including the shadow makers, came to believe the lie. However, in the new media environment of X and podcasts, not everyone was fooled. New media allowed them to get a glimpse of reality, as hedge fund manager Bill Ackman relates here.
The most powerful moment for many people, actually one of them for me, is I truly believed that Trump had said that the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists were very fine people, were among the very fine people who were protesting. And it takes about 2 minutes to actually watch what he said to realize that he said precisely the opposite, that he condemned. He said, I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists when he's talking about very fine people. And that's the moment when you realize, oh my God, I really have been misled by the media.
Thanks to the outrageous lie of the Find People hoax, Bill Ackman and countless others became red-pilled to the true nature of the corporate media. If they were lying about this, what other projected shadows might be false? For those that remain in the cave, the landslide election of Donald Trump hit them like a reality-bound freight train. The shadow makers have been telling them the race for the White House was close, and Harris had an excellent chance of winning. The realization that this was not even remotely true left them confused and angry. This is how author Chuck Lauterman expressed his feelings upon realizing this.
Here's the other problem.
I know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. Like, I don't know what's happening in the world. And I have to accept it. I have to accept that I have no idea what's happening because I don't. Like, it's not, and I'm not saying this from this position of outrage. I'm saying this from a position of sort of like, I guess in some ways, vulnerability, like just my recognition that I am now receiving my understanding about life through external sources that are not giving me a real depiction of what's happening.
A majority of the American public no longer has any faith in the corporate media. They have left the cave, and in doing so, have made the shadow makers irrelevant. Their power rested on the ability to deceive a trusting public. Now that they have lost that trust, they have also lost their power and self-respect. This has made them extremely angry. Axios founder Jim Vanderhey perfectly expresses their impotent rage at this new reality here.
Elon Musk sits on Twitter every day, or X today, saying like, we are the media, you are the media. My message to Elon Musk is bullshit. You're not the media. What we do, what journalists do, what you did in Mississippi, what Al Jazeera does in the Middle East. Like, being a reporter's hard, really hard.
Vanderhey, like most of his fellow shadow makers, lacks the humility and therefore the introspection to honestly assess why no one takes them seriously anymore. The promotion of the Fine People hoax is only the tip of the iceberg, as new media's Jimmy Dore points out here.
He's getting an honor. He's getting an award at the National Press Club, and he doesn't look happy because he knows that the establishment media is becoming quickly irrelevant because of social media, places like this, and Twitter.
You don't do that by popping off on Twitter.
Yeah, 300 words on X doesn't make you a journalist, but reading a memo handed down to you from the military-industrial complex, that certainly makes you a journalist, right? At least by today's standards. Lying about every war in my lifetime, that makes you a journalist, right? Lying about RFK, lying about Russiagate for 8 years straight, making it up, lying about January 6th, lying about vaccines and COVID and masks and lockdown, lying about everything that's important to anybody. That makes you a journalist, right? They know it's over.
Podcaster Dave Smith puts it this way.
I view the corporate media apparatus in not just the United States of America, but in most Western countries as essentially state propaganda. They might as well be state media. There's essentially no difference there. Their job is to cover for powerful people and to spin the narrative that those powerful people wish for the plebs to believe. So I think that's always been true. Like, there's nothing drastically different in this last year as opposed to, 50 years ago or something like that. And if you look at the way, the media lied the United States into Vietnam or something like that, or, this is always what they've been in the business of doing. What's striking to me about the last year is how profoundly stupid the propaganda has become and kind of their inability to adjust to the new facts on the ground. So, something like, just for one example, which I guess I care about because he's a good friend of mine, but so Tony Hinchcliffe, when he speaks at the Nazi rally in Madison Square Garden, if you are at all plugged into like social media or this world of internet shows that we're a part of, you just kind of know this video has gone viral. I mean, there's, the video of Tony doing his insult comic routine is, you'll see one clip on Twitter that's got 3 million, another has 7 million, another has 600,000, another has that. Now, CNN at the same time is getting like 200,000 views on their daytime show. And this show is telling you that a speaker made a comment at a Trump rally. But everyone who's seen that is also seeing the actual thing. Like, they can literally see that you're lying to me. So, like, you got to step it up here, guys. You got to adjust. And they just didn't adjust. And the lies, it's not that they're lying. That's nothing new. But the lies, like, Joe Biden is sharp as a tack. And Kamala Harris is a phenomenon of joy. And, you know, like, they were just so blatant that it's like, well, of course, nobody's going to be fooled by this, or next to nobody. So I think the best thing that's come of this election and the fallout since is that even the corporate media has finally had to admit that they're not the mainstream anymore.
What the election of Donald Trump signifies is that the age of the corporate media shadow makers has come to an end. Much like television displaced radio and print as the primary source of news in the 1960s, X and podcast has done the same to television and cable news. Some of this has occurred due to factors beyond their control, but the deepest wounds were self-inflicted. What happens to the shadow makers when the prisoners leave the cave? The cavern collapses. It turns out that even Plato's cave cannot stand when the only people left to deceive are the deceivers themselves. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more insights, and I will see you next time.